there, Andrew Bell once again. As we continue to bask in beautiful weather here on the Gold Coast, our summer has really pressed through well into autumn. Now, there's much talk about the continued concerns about the incredible housing crisis here in Australia, but it is interesting to note that the same situation has played out in many countries throughout the world. It's not unique to Australia. Nowhere is the housing crisis felt more than in the rental market. And the situation is going to get a lot worse for a lot longer before we see any relief. I'm just back from my board meeting with the Real Estate Institute of Australia. The message from all my fellow directors from around the country is that this rental crisis is common throughout every market in Australia. It is clearly an issue of supply and demand. Throughout our boom years of 2020 and 21, many landlords who had seen rents being dormant for well over 10 years were enticed to sell their properties given that their returns were so poor, not only as a result of virtually no increase in rents over many years, but because of the significant increase in outgoings such as rates and insurance and body corporates levies and the like. New investors were not enticed into the market because they are also outpriced by home buyers in the purchasing process over that 2-year period. So during 2020 and 21, we saw the gross number of properties in the rental market decline in volume, with many markets seeing as much as 17% less rental properties than pre-pandemic. That's an incredible number. Now, in recent times, numerous state governments have also increased the impost on landlords with changes to legislation. That's not only resulted in some landlords selling, but it also created a situation where many potential new investors lost interest in buying. I think our state governments have been out of sync with what's happening in the real estate market and not even realised that rather than incentivising people to buy investment properties, they've actually disincentivised people. Heaven forbid the recent suggestion by some people to introduce some form of rent control or rent freeze to existing rents. It has already triggered quite a number of landlords to sell. And if that proposal gained any credibility or momentum, you would see a lot more investors just leaving the market. Now, on the demand side of the equation, it's set to get worse. Now, the return of migrants and international students is proving an important injection into our labour market, where we saw great shortages, but it's also putting further pressure and strain on the rental market. Long-term overseas migrants largely rent when they first come to Australia. And remembering that we've had our borders closed in 2020 and 21, that actually shut out 400,000 migrants that would have come here if the borders had been open. But they are now open. So we can expect over 200,000 people per year, and the great majority of those will be heading straight into the rental market. Of course, we need the migrants to fill the incredible amount of empty employment positions throughout the country. And so it's a real catch-22 situation. One further thing to mention is that building approvals are now at their lowest level in a decade as of January. The number of standalone home approvals dropped 13.5%, and combined with a 44% slump in the approvals of attached homes, that's apartments and townhouses or semi-detached homes, we see the weakest figures since 2012. The pipeline of apartments, which is what most investors turn to, has already narrowed dramatically. And the lack of supply of new attached dwellings is not expected to pick up before 2025 at the earliest. So less construction simply means less supply, and that means higher rental prices. No surprise that Westpac predicts advertised rents will rise 11.5% this year, and that'll be the sharpest rise in annual rent increases on record. Now, what governments should be doing is incentivising investors to buy. It may well only need to be done for a 2 or 3 year period. That should come in forms of tax concessions and the like. But the talk of government, particularly at federal level, is that they're looking to raise taxes and tampering once again with things like negative gearing and capital gains tax, which will only see more investors driven from the market and prevent others coming in. If the government is not going to build public housing, then they are totally dependent on private investors, and so it will be essential for the government to change their attitude towards the rental market in order to help the thousands of people who are dependent on rental properties for a home. It's really important to remember that 93% of landlords are normal, average, everyday Australians, all who've made a decision to try and secure their retirement by taking somewhat of a risk to buy an investment property. And they need to be supported to help others who desperately need rental accommodation. It's a myth that landlords today are a wealthy group of people who take advantage of the less fortunate. No question that the solution to this housing crisis lays solely at the feet of governments, not only at federal and state level, but to a degree at our local level with policies around zoning and the like. Rising interest rates certainly haven't helped, nor will they. And what we need to be seeing is greater support for the landlords rather than penalising landlords. Urgent steps need to be taken because this rental crisis is with us for years to come. Amazing times that we live in, and I do plead to anyone who's thinking about buying an investment property to please do it as soon as possible because our fellow Australians desperately need rental accommodation. The more people that can stand up and buy an investment property, the greater the service you are providing to our fellow Australians. Well, I'll be back with you in a fortnight's time. Look forward to being with you then.